Well, this is the second time that I'm recording this because the first time, every time I said Echo character, my Amazon Echo went bananas. So I muted it so that I can talk about this story. This story is a leak, and I'm using big ol' air quotes here for leak, of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate character roster updates. Basically, there's somebody who basically claims to work in like the marketing business, and they had access to this big picture that showed all of the characters in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and there were a bunch of characters that we've not heard of yet being in. Before we get to the characters that are in it, I want to talk about why I think that this leak is false. First off, this is one of those blurry photographs. I'll bring it up on the screen so you can see. And if you're just listening to the podcast, then follow the link in the show notes so that you can see it. But it's one of those blurry pictures, and if you try and click on the pictures, you can see how very, very blurry it is. And that right there tells me that it's a mistake. And I know that a lot of people will say, well, they're trying to not give away that they're taking that picture because they'd get in trouble. But most people walk around with an incredibly fancy camera in their pocket. Most people walk around with a very, very fancy camera in their pocket. It's your phone. And I honestly can't think of a phone out there that doesn't have a burst mode. And if you just hold down the burst mode and take like 1.5 billion pictures, nobody's going to notice, and it won't be blurry. And I think that people often, when we see these fakes, they will often have, how do I want to say this? They will often have like a blurry image. And I think that most of the time the reason is because they think it's more believable. And I think in this day and age, I don't think it's very believable that people would take, if they're trying to leak something, that people would take a super blurry image. I just find it a little ridiculous. Like, you might take the image and then you'd look and say, oh, nobody's going to believe that. It's so blurry. Let me take another picture that can better show what it is that we're trying to see here in the picture. That's not the only reason that I think it's false. Now, I will say this, that there is something in the picture that makes it a little more believable, and that is some unseen before Grinch renders. There's a new Grinch movie coming out, and there's some images that show something that people hadn't seen before that makes people say, oh, wait a second, look at that Grinch thing in there. That Grinch thing, like, that would not be found just anywhere. I'm trying to bring up the picture right now. Here it is. So they've got this picture of the Grinch, and they're like, look at that. We've never seen that image of the Grinch before. That lends some credence to the idea that this is a real thing, that this person works in a place that would have marketing materials laying around. And while I agree that that does certainly lend credence to it, I don't think that that means that it's a lock that this is definitely 100% accurate information. Let's talk about the lineup of unconfirmed fighters for Smash. The first one is Shadow the Hedgehog, which makes perfect sense because we already have Sonic the Hedgehog in it, and Shadow the Hedgehog is very, very easily somebody that you could use to make an Echo fighter of Sonic. And that makes it perfectly plausible that we would see Shadow the Hedgehog in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Although personally, I would rather have Tails. I think that Tails is a bigger character in the Sonic franchise than Shadow is. But, that's just me, I guess. The next one is Ken. Ken from Street Fighter. I feel like that's as easily an Echo character of Ryu, and I've kind of been predicting that we would see a Ken Echo fighter in Smash for a while now. That shouldn't surprise anyone. So those two, I feel like we'll just throw. Those are easy things that people would say. Well, what would Nintendo do to easily pad out the roster without adding a whole lot of extra work? The next two characters that they talked about, or that are unconfirmed, are Banjo-Kazooie and Geno. Geno from Super Mario RPG, and Banjo-Kazooie from, of course, Banjo-Kazooie. And the reason why I think that anybody who would decide to make up a rumor would include these two is because these are two characters that people have been clamoring for a very, very long time. People have been saying, please add these characters into Smash. They would be fantastic. People even asked, I can't remember his name off the top of my head right now. Phil, not Schiller, he works at Apple. Phil something, who works at Microsoft, who owns the Banjo-Kazooie franchise because they bought Rare. So people actually asked them, would you be willing to allow Nintendo to use Banjo-Kazooie? They asked this back when the last Smash Brothers was getting DLC, and Nintendo asked people who they thought should be in it. People asked Phil Spencer, maybe it is. I think maybe Phil Spencer of Microsoft. Would you guys allow Banjo-Kazooie to be in Smash Brothers? And he said, yes, we would. The other character who is in the list is Geno, and people have been asking for Geno to be included because, I'm going to be honest here, I haven't played very much of Super Mario RPG. It didn't hold my attention for very long. Of course, I also played it like last year, in not back when it first came out, so that might be a reason. But I know that people have been asking for Geno from that game to be in Smash Brothers for a very long time. So if I were to make up a leak, what I would do is I would say, let me grab two very, very plausible Echo fighters. Let me grab two very, very plausible additions that people have been asking for a while, and then we'll sprinkle in some other things that people have been asking for. Well, we'll get to it now. Isaac from Binding of Isaac. That's an incredibly popular game, Binding of Isaac, and a lot of people absolutely adore that game. And it makes perfect sense for Nintendo to say, hey, can we get this character? We can kind of cross promotion. And like, so Banjo-Kazooie, Isaac, and Geno, they all kind of fall into this category of wish list characters that people have. And if I were to make up a rumor, I would have wish list characters, Echo characters, and then I would throw in a couple of things that would make people go, well, what are those from? That makes it more believable. Other than just throwing a bunch of wish list characters in there, it makes it more believable to throw in something that people haven't been asking for. And that's what this person did. And I'm not saying that they made up this leak. I'm just saying, if this fits a pattern that I would follow if I were making up a leak. And the two characters that they added in that were not really something that people have been looking for a long time is Mach Rider from the original, like, that was almost a launch game for the NES. And then Chorus Kids, which I had to look up, and they're from Elite Beat Agents, I think. I forgot now. I looked it up earlier and I forgot it. So that list: Shadow, Banjo-Kazooie, Isaac, Ken, Mach Rider, Geno, and Chorus Kids. Those characters, like, that is a really, really good list of things that it checks off all the boxes for things that would make it believable. It's easy for them to make Echo characters because they don't change the balance overall too much. And right now, there's not a lot of Echo characters. It's easy for them to say, let's bring in these other characters that a lot of people have been asking for a long time, because Nintendo just showed that they have been listening to that because they brought Ridley into the game. And then let's throw in some other things that people wouldn't normally think of in order to make the rumor more believable. Because if it's just everything that everybody's ever been asking for, then it's a little less believable, I think. So I know that this leak is gaining traction all over the internet, but I'm not buying it. I don't think it's true. That doesn't mean that I wish that this kind of stuff didn't happen, because it is fun to talk about. It is fun to think about. And overall, I find it amusing. Now, if it is true, then I'm sad that not because I don't like the character list, because I want people to be happy, and I'll probably just end up playing Duck Hunt and Pac-Man anyway. If it does turn out to be true, then I'm sad, because this is why we can't have nice things. Like, Mr. Sakurai's been toiling away to try and make this game for us, and they have announcements that they want to make at certain times, and then here we are spoiling it for everybody. That kind of sucks, because they've probably, if let's pretend for a second that this is true, they probably have this cool Nintendo Direct video that they're about to show us, where people are like, oh my God, what is that? Oh my, Chorus Kids. Oh, wow. I never saw that coming. That kind of thing. I think that makes it a little less fun for us, and probably more than a little frustrating for Mr. Sakurai and Nintendo and Bandai Namco. So I don't think that this rumor is true. That doesn't mean that I don't think that we will see these characters, but I don't think that this is a leak. I just don't. Wyvern Ripsnarl in chat says, I have a very unpopular opinion, but I would like, if there's one more leak, for Sakurai to cancel the game. That'll teach the leakers. No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't teach them. It would make people double down on trying to get the leaks so that they could ruin it for other people. So no, I don't think that that's, well, obviously I know you're being facetious and you know that would never happen, but it wouldn't teach anybody anything to do that. Anyway, what do you guys think of the character list? I'm very curious to hear what you think about it. Do you believe the leak? Do you think I'm full of garbage? I would love to hear what you think about this particular story, because I think it's very, very interesting, number one. Number two, it's fun to pontificate about. And number three, I think it's fake.